I want to thank everybody for being here. We're going to base this town hall on a lot of Q&A. So there is a notes page in your folder also, along with some really good articles and information for you to take home about resilience. That's what we're really talking about, surviving versus thriving, and resilience, and what's that mean? So think about those questions in your head. What does that look like for you? We're going to start with a brief panel discussion, hopefully prompt some questions. But use that note piece of paper there to write down your questions, and we will try to get through to everybody with questions. We're also online. Hello, Facebook. Everybody say hi, Facebook. Hi. So we're on Facebook, and we're also going to be taking comments and questions from there if there are any. All of these town halls are made available virtually, so if, for instance, you couldn't make it here tonight because of weather or something happens to your car, go to our Facebook page, which is Pride Center Florida on Facebook, and this is there live, so you can watch it. So we do stream it, and you can at least participate that way. And I will say the same thing because we're in coordination, the wellness program and active aging here. The Tuesday Coffee and Conversation is also online. So these are great ways to socialize and at least be part of something if you can't be here physically. From the folder, you'll notice that there's also some stories in there about folks living with HIV. These are called promise stories. They are empowerment stories, stories of empowerment of individuals facing up to a challenge in their lives. These happen to be around living with HIV. So we wanted to put that in there. If folks are living with HIV and want to share your story, it's really about overcoming a challenge related to HIV. So you can contact me, anybody in the wellness program, and we would love to hear your story of empowerment if you have a story to share. We're always looking for that. And then we do share them with the community. They can't be anonymous. They don't have to have your photo and your name on it. But they do provide a useful tool for other that that may be in the same struggle. Because nobody is really alone. No man is an island. No woman is an island. No person is an island. We have the pre and post evaluation and the feedback on the left-hand side. We have the bios there, and then some articles for you to take home. And hopefully folks enjoyed the food and the resilience stations and circulated around. But I did want to start with our panel, everybody here. And I want to start a little with some feedback from the resilience stations, if there is any. And the question is for the panelists, and we can just go right down the station here. Somebody's phone is going off, but that's okay, you're important. For the panelists, can you share a little about the resilience station experience if you have something to share? But more importantly, what does resilience mean in your area of expertise? And your areas of expertise, you can certainly remind people here, it's in the bio. But we really want to hear what your impression of resilience is. And I'll start with Rusty. And please use the mics, just because we're on Facebook also, and folks there may not be able to hear.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Rusty Carbaugh. I'm a personal trainer and recruiter at Symmetry Fitness. And most of the clients that I work with are HIV positive or are cancer survivors who are experiencing wasting and they're learning to put back on weight. I run some weight loss groups, but the vast majority of the training that I do is that slow rehab training. This shirt is not a shirt you can go out and buy. This is a shirt you have to earn. And so that's why I wear it with pride. A lot of people tell us that when we are injured or we have an injury, to rest. And rest is important, but movement goes side by side with rest. And the new research over the last 30 years is that the quicker that we can get you up and moving after a surgery, after some sort of life event has happened, the quicker that you can get to moving safely within the confines of how the human body is designed to move, meaning moving on a plane based on the hinge or the type of joint that you're using, then we can rehab you faster and you can have 2 to 3 times better the experience. Hip replacements where people get up and start moving that same day last longer. The people who do that have a better recovery. Now, why do people not do that? The number one reason that people don't jump into training is not because they fear they can't do it. They are afraid they're going to get hurt. They've already come into this in one hurt state, and they're thinking that they might wind up in another hurt state. So for me, resilience, when I think about resilience, I think about water, right? There's this bottle of water here, and in this state, what do we call it?
Liquid.
It's a liquid, right? This is when it's water. It's really just chemically bonded hydrogen and oxygen models that are atoms that are circulating around in there together, right? But that same product can become what? And when exposed to extreme cold? Ice, right? That same product that is ice, when exposed to extreme heat, becomes what? Gas. And then when we recollect that again, it becomes what? Water. It's all the same thing. And that's what resilience is. Water is the ultimate flexibility tool. Water is the one thing, and I'm sure you'll speak about this, on the spiritual level, it seeks its own level. Water is comfortable in whatever form that it is in. Water is a thing that has shaped the earth more than anything else. Water, when it expands, when it freezes, it expands 8%. That's how big rocks become little rocks. The water gets in there, it freezes and expands, rock shells off, it comes into the ocean, it breaks apart further. Anything that water doesn't need, water kicks aside whenever it can. It finds a way to remove excess sodium to remain in balance with potassium and other magnesium, other chemicals in the body. So the thing about resilience is learning to be comfortable in whatever state you are in and realizing that rest and movement go hand in hand. If you're going to have movement, you need rest. And if you're going to have rest, you need movement. And the ability to push through that, discomfort. So there's a difference between discomfort and pain, particularly in training. Everybody knows what the pain scale is when you go to the doctor and the doctor says, where are you at on this 1 to 10, right? You realize that it's all made up. That's just the best that we can do with the science that we have as a way to get some data from you about what you're feeling. And we kind of use that in our training too, where if it's a 1 to 2, I want to know about it, but we're going to push through it. If it gets to that 3 or that 4 in training, that's where we say, okay, what's going on in the body that is causing this? And 9 times out of 10, if I move a 5 or 10 degree angle on the shoulder, I can make that pain go away. Okay, it's really about learning how to move the body within the way that the body is designed to be moved. It's not about following these extreme Instagrammers, and some of the stuff that I post on my Instagram, I can do Bosu balance and ball slams and jump up on boxes and all that kind of stuff, and I'm 52 years old, or I will be 52 in December. But it's really about, and I only discovered fitness as a way for me to stay sane. I'm HIV positive, I've been positive for 16 years. I'm also in recovery. Crystal meth took me down. I had to spend almost 3 years, 28 months in county jail to get my shit together because I couldn't get sober. Went to rehab, spent a lot of money on rehab because I was afraid the rehab was gonna show up on my permanent record, you know? So I didn't want my insurance paying for it, so I paid for it with cash. And I had to find a way to reinvent myself when I lost all of that. And fitness was there for me. I just kind of fell into it. And then I was able to tap into my teaching because I always wanted to be a teacher growing up. I never wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a teacher. But teachers didn't make any money. So what did you do? You chased after the money because you're taught that money's gonna make you happy. But all that that does is continue to push you from cycles of comfort to discomfort, comfort to discomfort. And that's really all that it is. And realizing it's all the same thing. It's just in a different shape. And water can do something different than ice can do. And ice can do something different than gas, steam can do. But they all cause movement. All of those products. You look at hydroelectricity, you look at using steam, converting steam to heat and power and move locomotives. All of these things are examples in resiliency and how we overcome those things and push through those. And I tell my clients all the time, the great equalizer is the toilet, especially as we age. When you get up in the middle of the night and you plop down on that toilet, you're like, shit, I've got to get back up in 3 minutes. Because the average toilet in the US is 15 inches, right? And so when you're coming up and down off of that toilet and your knees are cracking, or, you know, at my house, the joke is we have a townhouse, and so I'm going up and down the stairs, and they can hear me coming down the stairs, not because I'm loud, but because my knees are cracking as you're going up and down the stairs. And so I train people to be resilient in their movement so that we can live a longer, more comfortable life as we age.
Cool. Thank you, Rusty.
All right. So it's interesting to follow someone, but I was thinking about everything you said, and I was like, well, that was a great little talk on water, and I wasn't going to bring anything up on water. So that was your spiritual talk on water, which I enjoyed very much. Resiliency. We're all resilient. Do you believe you're resilient?
Yeah. Yes.
You've made it through everything in your life.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, we are already resilient. Sometimes we forget though. Sometimes life gets heavy. Sometimes the information that we're faced with brings us down. Sometimes there's fear that comes into the existence. I'm the spirit side of things. I don't know if I said that when I got the mic. And to me, the exciting part about resilience and spirituality is, well, I guess I can talk about water. Because for a long time, when I was a lot younger, I would look at this and see what was missing. I didn't see what was there. And when I got on the spiritual journey, I started to look at what's here, what's in me, what's in all of us. Where is the good? Where is the truth? And so for me, when I was thinking about resilience, to talk here at the center, I started to think about, personal experiences in our life. We all have gone through hardships, whether it's on the physical plane, the mental plane, the spiritual plane, the emotional plane, and the ability to bounce back. But not only just bounce back, but learn and grow from it. That to me is spirituality. Yes, I am a senior minister at a center. And I was talking to somebody at the workstation who I don't believe is in here, or maybe they were. Yes, it's you. Talking about you don't have to go to a center, right? Spirituality is everywhere. We're spirit already. So you don't need a center. Sorry if people from my center are watching that want me to make fun of me, telling you not to come in. But you have everything you need already within you. It's already within you. The resilience, the power, the wisdom, the strength, the ability to push through, the ability to look into your life and have a change of thought, right? Instead of something's happening to me, we get to change it to something's happening for me. It's happening for me. It's meant to happen, quote unquote, to me because it's happening for me because I'm meant to grow and expand. I'm not meant to be here in this world, in this existence, to stay the same. Like our wonderful friend here talked about fitness. What do we do in fitness? We tear the muscle. We tear it so it can grow. So we go through this experience of spirituality, right? Coming into contact of who and what we truly are. We come into experiences that could break our hearts. It could probably even break our spirits. But it's there for you to grow. It's there for you to expand. When it comes to resilience, what came up too is this idea of being flexible, which also has to do with, hey, we're just going back and forth, right? You're giving the spirit, I'm giving the body too. But it's about being flexible, right? Think about being blown in the wind, right? Being able to be moved. We live in South Florida, so when a hurricane comes, can a tree bend under the pressure that's there, or does it break? And resiliency is the ability to be flexible. We take what comes on and we can dance with it. We can move with it. We can allow it to inform us, inform our steps, inform the direction in which we're going in our life. I know when things happen and things are difficult, it's a shock to the system. With spirituality, we have spiritual practices, and those help us. Those help us build a foundation so that we're able to move, we're able to flex. We don't break all the time. And as you move in your spiritual growth, it becomes an opportunity to wake up quicker, right? To not be taken down by an experience as long as you were before. Because I would have experiences in my life, you know, I went through mental health stuff. I was depressed, I was suicidal. I had things that would weigh me down and I could not see through it at all. And what changed was when I stopped trying to see through it outside of myself and I started to look within myself. I started to sit with the pain. I started to become curious. I started to ask the questions that this can't be it. This isn't life. Life isn't about suffering. It's about joy. It's about beauty. It's about happiness. You know, we've all possibly heard the saying that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And suffering is a story I keep telling myself about the experience I have over and over and over again. So we get to come into contact with spiritual practices. Prayer, meditation, movement, I believe is a spiritual practice. Getting out into nature, spiritual study. You know, anything. Be curious as to what am I putting into my mind, my awareness. Where am I spending my time? Is it in social media? Is it in news? It's great to be informed, but if all I'm looking for is this information outside of myself, it's gonna feed us fear. Fear is gonna keep us constricted, contracted, and stuck. We have more power than that. We're greater than anything that's happening outside of us. And to me, that's resilience. Coming to the awareness, awakening to the remembrance of who and what we truly are. I think that's it.
Thank you, Reverend.
I mean, what am I supposed to say after that?
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. So, you know, a lot of times, well, I'll ask the question rather than make the assertion or make this blanket statement. Can you raise your hand? And I'm sorry if you can't see it on Facebook, but for the people in the room, can you raise your hand if you've ever felt like you didn't want to deal with something, like an issue that came up? Oh, I don't want to talk about that, right? Anybody? I don't want to talk about that. Have you ever struggled to remember a tough time in your life? You know, your brother or sister, or maybe even your child, or mom or dad has said to you, you remember that time you got in that fight with little Johnny at school and you got suspended? Yeah, and you're like, I don't remember that. So those moments come up for us in the mental health space as a struggle for resilience. You know, those moments where we're actually practicing or participating in some type of ego defense mechanism where we're blocking something out, right? With repression, maybe we're in denial because we got a diagnosis. Maybe we are hopefully practicing sublimation where we take a negative and turn it into a positive. But that doesn't always happen. But we do struggle sometimes with actually participating in resilience. Does anybody have like a really close friend that they talk to on a day-to-day basis or a regular basis that inspires them? Yeah? Does that same person remind you of who you have been or who you are on a core level? Yeah? Those are what we call in therapy mirrors. Mirrors to your soul. Mirrors that help you see and be reminded of who you are and what you can accomplish, right? Because sometimes we forget. We step outside of resilience and we start living in fear. We don't move like water, we freeze like ice, right? Fight or flight, right? So rather than doing that, really making sure that we stay mindful of the people that we have around us, those mirrors that we need to be in touch with, because this is, after all, a community, the LGBTQIA plus community, right? Yes? Yes? Perfect, all right. So each one of you has your own respective members of your community. So maybe it's like, you know, your 5 type people, or your road dogs, your do or dies, whatever you want to call them. Or maybe it's a community center like the Pride Center, where you can come and get fed some good information and also be reminded of everything that you've already been through. right? Anybody remember Stonewall? Stonewall, yeah, okay, all right. Anybody remember being chased out of a bar or told that, or called a word that sticks out in our own respective minds as we grow up as children? And it might have been, okay, all right, I was gonna go down the list of them, but that's not necessary, right? I see how resilient you can become, right? But those times that you've already been through, some kind of way we just tuck those way back in the recesses of our own consciousness, when in fact, in moments like today, or maybe even yesterday for some of you, maybe some of you may need to tap into this for tomorrow, but those moments of resilience, those things matter and they mean something, and they're there for you to pull up on, whatever. You got it, right? I love the fact that the two of you were so spot on with everything that you said. It's just truly amazing. It feels like they picked some pretty cool speakers or panelists to actually speak on this topic, because as I sit here with my sister and now my brother, I get a chance to actually look in the crowd and see so many mirrors for myself. So many people who reflect back to me the resilience that I have in me, because I couldn't have made it here as that little depressed 23-year-old when I moved to Florida, who was struggling with substance use, who was struggling with suicidality and depression, in order to sit in front of you today and talk about resilience, because I didn't feel like I had any. But somebody somewhere believed in me enough so that they actually put their arms around me, and they put me in a space where I could heal and I could grow into the person you see today, just like each and every one of you have done so for yourselves. So it's great to be amongst you, and thank y'all so much for actually listening.
Thank you all. So I think a running theme, water. So really, I think water created the Grand Canyon. How resilient is that? Slowly, 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 just doing what it does, and look at the result. And as the theme, I love, Rusty, you said, learning to move the body as it was made to move, meaning that it inherently has the ability to move certain ways. Reverend Tina, you said, you have everything you need in you already, but you may need some prompting from outside. And Klifton, you also commented on that others may remind us of who we are, and those moments of resilience are in us already, but we may need others to remind that, put an arm around us and remind us of that, or train us on how to be resilient. Think about driving, right? You didn't grow up, weren't born being able to drive. You learned to drive, but you had it in you to have that skill, or do a job that you had. So I think for me, the messaging really is, there's a lot of this in us already. So mind, body, spirit, we may need some training, we may need some prompting to pull it out of us. But we're all, as you said, we're here. We've made it this far. That's a lot of resilience that people have in this room. So let's celebrate that, and let's expand on that if possible. Thank you all. I'll go to the second question and then think about questions. I want to come to the audience. Does anybody online have any questions or anything? Okay, not yet. So online folks, if you're watching, put some questions in. We are monitoring that. Panelists, can you start, and we'll start the other way now. We'll go from Klifton on down. Can you talk briefly about the difference between surviving and thriving, and what that means to you?
So I look at surviving as simplistic, or as simply as when I'm hungry and there's food in the kitchen, there's usually nothing that I won't try to consume if I'm that hungry, right? Like I'm gonna find something that's gonna kill that hunger, that's gonna fill me in some way, shape, form, or fashion. If I have the opportunity to actually plan a meal and decide how to fill myself to the best of its ability, to the best of my ability, I'll probably pick a nice steak. I'll take my time cooking that. I will make sure I have some nice asparagus. Maybe I'll even make an au jus to like just dip my steak in. I don't know, like I'll go crazy. It's my dream. It's my dream meal. But if I'm just looking to survive in life, I will do whatever it takes in order to make it to the next moment, in order to breathe, in order to live. When I'm looking at thriving, I'm trying to reach for my highest and best. I want to be the biggest, best, brightest version of myself. I want to read the most informative column in the newspaper, or the most inspiring and the most awing book that I can actually grab my hands, put my hands on. I want to listen to the most breathtaking music. I want to give to me in some of the biggest ways that I can. Whereas when I'm surviving, I'm just trying to breathe. I just want to get from this moment that I'm struggling in to the next moment in hopes that it'll be a little bit better. So that would kind of be my answer.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds good.
Did you want mental health? Or that was good.
No, that's good.
Okay.
It's your answer.
Your
Yes, okay. Yep.
Surviving. When I think about surviving, I feel like it's, I mean, this is gonna look like a flat line, right? It doesn't look like surviving, but just living life here, right? Just getting by. And I get it, sometimes we have to live certain times in our life where we're just getting by, but we're barely getting our basic needs met, right? This idea about survival, the first thing that came up to my brain was definitely the ego, right? Our egos was put in us, right? We have that part of our being for survival. Way back when, back in the day, when we're being chased by something that can attack us, it's there to protect us. So in survival, we're in protection mode. In protection mode, it might be a fight or flight situation. In survival, that's where disease can come into play. And in spiritual communities, we call it dis-ease, not just disease. Dis-ease. We're not at ease. We're not at ease. So everything first starts, to me, energetically, before it ever lands and expresses in our body. So if I'm in survival, and again, like I said, acknowledging and being compassionate for the individuals who are in survival. But if we have the capacity, and we do, to get ourselves above the water, right? Survival, treading water, exhausted, barely able to get through day in and day out of life. Thriving is a whole nother aspect, right? It's not living here, but it's having those high moments. And it doesn't mean we don't come back down, right? But that's the exciting part, up and down, up and down, up and down. And thriving, instead of surviving, right? There could be, in surviving, there could be fear, doubt, worry, all these low energy emotions. And in thriving, there's happiness, there's joy, there's bliss, there's love, there's clarity, there's openness, there's receptivity, and all of a sudden, there's the awareness of the signs and the support that's all around us. It's a different energetic field. And I personally believe it begins and ends in the mind. That is a state of consciousness. Yes, it's a state of physical experience, but they go back and forth. I believe wholeheartedly if we change our thoughts about who we are, what we're capable of, we change our experience in life. So I have the capacity within my being, and you each have the capacity in your being to move, if you're in survival mode, to thriving mode. It's our ability to do that. And in spirituality, I know a lot of people talk about, give bad rap to the ego, but my teacher always says that the ego is a great servant, but it's a horrible master. We get to put the ego in use for us. So it's not about getting rid of the aspect that's here to help to protect us. We can be grateful for the ego. We can be grateful for all of the ways in which it is protecting us. But we know that we get to choose to have a higher existence, to have a higher experience, to have a higher level and vibration in which we live. And to me, that's thriving.
Thank you.
You guys have some tough questions.
Yeah, we're trying.
I kind of think about surviving and thriving as surviving is where you have enough. You just have enough. You have just enough of what you need to get through the day. You're not necessarily getting through that day in comfort, but you are getting through. And then thriving is more of that abundance model, where I have more than enough of all that I need. That's thriving. Surviving is where I exist and I'm worried about me. Thriving is where I exist and I'm worried about me and my spouse and my family and my community. And I have bandwidth that I can contribute in those places. And the only reason that I have that bandwidth that I can contribute in those places is because I keep showing up. You know, surviving requires that you keep showing up. Surviving is that trudging. You're in the mangroves and the water is nasty and the mud is sucking you down into the bottom of it. But you are still pushing forward. You are still pushing one foot in front of the other. To trudge means to walk with purpose. But when you're thriving, you got a little John boat, and you're on the top of the water, and you're getting right through, and the fish are coming up to you saying, let me get into your boat, not throw me a worm and let me get hooked on it. Where you're attracting those things that you want in your life. You know, we work out because we want to attract a certain kind of energy to us. I want to put a certain image of me out in the world, and I also work out as a defense mechanism. I work out and I kind of stay big so people stay the F away from me. It's a defense mechanism as much as it is, you know, ego. Or I used to be super fat. When I was a lawyer, I sat behind a desk all day. My husband can tell you I was not a happy person. I didn't look happy. I created problems for people so that I could then create the solution for them and charge them a shit ton of money for it. And now I get to be in the solution, and I get to be focused on that thing that helps you show up. And my clients, I'm not just their personal trainer. A lot of them are in recovery, and while I don't sponsor anybody that I train, I'm a resource for them. And that is continuing to thrive. Being of service, and the reason that service is such a big part of all the recovery models, is you cannot be of service if you don't have enough. 2 dead batteries will never start a car. And that's the kind of model that we operate in. And if you're thinking about bodybuilding and how you work out and how the body moves, you can think of surviving as the lightweight, lots of reps. You're not gonna get very far. You're gonna burn more calories and you're gonna consume more body energy than you are going to build with lighter weights and more reps. But the body is built with those heavier weights, using a time under tension model where, like you talked about, those micro tears, you are literally tearing your muscle. And as the muscle grows, that is literally a healing process. The body is repairing itself through protein synthesis. So when you do all of those things, that is that thriving model. But what people don't realize is that it's a different model of work. It's a different way of thinking. It happens in the mind. And you have to make a declaration for yourself about what it is that you want to accomplish that day, and then do not deviate from that. If you want to stay sober today, that means you don't use, right? And you don't deviate from that. If you want to lose weight today, that means you go to the gym and you don't stop at 7-Eleven and get a whole pizza on the way home. I'm not saying that I've ever done that. Only on Friday nights. But no, you kind of stick to something. And it also, you know, thriving also does not mean that we don't mess up. You know, we do mess up. We all mess up. None of us is perfect, and nor does anybody expect anybody else to be perfect. But the key in thriving is the self-awareness to know that you fucked up and move in the direction of fixing that. That's thriving. Surviving is where we sit kind of in that, you know, you were talking about that energy. These lower frequency energies drain the body very, very quickly. And we tend to sit in those and hold on to those and nurture those. And then those fast, higher vibration, higher frequency energies, I don't know why we seem to take those for granted. We let those come and go on a whim. But those low vibration energies, we want to hold them, we want to coddle them, we want to say, here, have a seat and stick around, right? So thriving means that we move outside of that and we say, okay, I've recognized this thing in myself. Here's where I am. I'm going to go be with you now because I need to be around that energy that lifts me up. And I'm never going to get better at tennis playing somebody who is worse than me at tennis. I will get better by playing people who are better than me, people who challenge me, people who push me outside of my comfort zones. And that's why I'm very particular about the people that I hang out with, is because, not because I'm just looking at it as a transactional thing, but I also have to hold on to the things that it took me 52 years to figure out. And then if I compromise in those areas, then my whole foundation can get wrecked. And everything that I'm working on will crumble. And resilience is recognizing that, having the flexibility and the mindset to be able to adapt to that circumstance, just like the water adapts to whatever environment it's in, without complaining. And there's a saying in recovery, that acceptance is the answer to all my problems today, right? And it really is. It's acceptance. It's okay to be in that place where you are, but also to realize that it's okay for you to move on. If it's not working for you, close the door. That's resilience. That's thriving and surviving.
Thank you. So just a few things I heard, and maybe not surprising that, surviving is just what's needed, and it's exhausting. It is a state of dis-ease, which I love, right? Not disease, but dis-ease, lack of ease, and it's just enough. Whereas the thriving is more reaching for the best, leading to a higher existence, something beyond where we're at, and also an abundance and wanting to help others, kind of like the dichotomy of surviving and thriving. I did want to ask Klifton, something that I've heard and something that has been brought up by Rusty and Robertina, this kind of focus on the negative, and I've heard that kind of the human mind is hardwired for survival to kind of focus on the negative and to take for granted when good things happen. And I know we've talked about, like at our resilience station, gratitude, journaling, recognizing those things. Can you talk a little bit about is that true? Is it just a matter of forming good habits around really recognizing good things?
I say yes. I think the biggest part is actually becoming aware of the fact that that's where you are. In science of mind, the idea is to get unstuck. In mental health, it's becoming aware, really being able to speak from that place of being able to acknowledge where you are. Hey, look, I'm really struggling with X, Y, or Z, depression, anxiety, grief and loss, a new diagnosis, dieting. This is where I am. This is what I acknowledge is going on. But being able to first say that part, and then start to open yourself up to other people who are willing to or who are capable of being able to help you see where you can get unstuck. Hey, these respective habits or behaviors are causing this type of dis-ease in your own respective body, and it's tearing you down. 9 times out of 10, in the mental health sphere, we start taking an immediate look at, funny enough, have you had a recent exam by your physician? Have you done your blood work? Have you given yourself an opportunity to speak to your primary care physician so we can take a look at your numbers, especially for men? Is your testosterone levels low? Like these things lead to people being stuck, which leads to depression, it leads to isolation, it leads to low energy, and so forth and so on. And sex is probably right there in the mix. It leads to low sexual drive. So being aware, I would say, would be a huge one. And then being able to talk to your respective professionals, your doctor, your mental health counselor, or your psychologist, your spiritual leader, your fitness trainer. We would all be able to help you understand where you are indeed stuck. Yes.
Cool. Thank you. So I wanted to check if we have any questions online. No? But we can certainly take some audience questions. I think there's one over here, and then we'll come over with the mic.
Yeah, what I was going to say, what I was going to say is, I'm not sure it's an either or. I mean, in my life, there are things in which I am thriving, and I get the win from it, but there are other things where I'm totally stuck. I mean, I am stuck on some things in my life. They don't work, but I give myself the win for the things that are, and I tend to concentrate on the things that are working well, and many things are working well for me. But I'm just saying, you can't present it like it's one or the other. For me, it's both at the same time.
Any panelists? So I did hear some of, like, you can still have survival mode when thriving, and there are ups and downs. If any of the panelists want to clarify that or address that.
Thank you for bringing that up, because you're right. There is that. There's different areas of our life. In our spiritual teaching, we talk about having, focusing on different areas and becoming aware. So the awareness is in each area, right? So we have the body temple, I have my spiritual practice, I have my finances, I have my livelihood. Can't think of any more right now, JC. Your ego, right? There's multiple areas in which we do live in life. It's not just life is only here, it's on multiple levels and multiple layers and multiple experiences. So thank you for bringing that up. It's not, you can be in both, and that's absolutely true. My invitation to all of that is knowing that the very areas in which you're thriving in, you have the capacity to thrive. Like, focus on that, right? I have the capacity to thrive in this area, and it looks like I don't have it here. But the truth is I have the capacity here as well. It just requires greater effort, greater work, greater movement, greater awareness, greater areas in which I can get support in, a deeper understanding in. So, that's all. Anyone else?
Yeah, and I think that's a good message, is that, again, we often recognize, and this may not be the case for you, but I know for me sometimes, I relish the problems I have and the downs. And I lose track of the things to be gracious for and have gratitude for. And it's a continual process. It's a habit to take a moment, which again, many of the resilience stations had things like take a moment, mindfulness, what is going on, gratitude, journaling, who do I have in my life? Yeah.
I think in the program, Rusty, you were saying you're in the program. The program talks about doing an inventory, daily inventory, right? In mental health counseling, you do an inventory. I would even imagine there's a spiritual practice that you all participate in. What is that? What for, like, doing an inventory?
I mean, we call it kind of the same thing.
Yeah, okay. I think being able to actually not only see where those areas that you're doing really well in, maybe even understanding that you may have an abundance in those areas, and you can shift some of that energy. Hey, I'm really knocking out this book that I love. Maybe you actually shift some of that to picking up the phone and calling those people you're disconnected with. Just being able to kind of like shift some of it.
Cool, thank you. Any other questions from the audience? We want to be cognizant of questions, because I have a few left. Yeah, so we have a question over there. Danny, get over there with the mic.
We really want to talk to y'all, so please.
Yes,
please
ask a question.
So, Rusty, when you were describing working out and everything, I was just getting tired just listening to your idea about doing it. And I was sort of like thinking in a negative way about myself and everything, and about how I go to physical therapy now, and then I just realized, I thought, you know me from a sport, from volleyball, and you know that despite the fact that I have neuropathy in my feet and I have no feeling in my feet, and despite the fact that if I fall down, I can't get up by myself, I still keep pushing and I still keep playing volleyball.
He still shows up.
I still
He's
show
still
up,
at the net.
Right, I still show up. So, and now I'm on 2 volleyball leagues. And Roger over here, he's on one of the leagues with me. So I do what I need to do. I'd like to lose some weight, but then again, I forget about the fact that I've already lost 140 pounds, So everything's relative, and this is good. This whole conversation conversation and everything. It's helping me to see the brighter side of things rather than just dwelling on the negatives.
One of the things that I always tell my clients is that, and I make them, I give away some workouts with them because I tell them up front, I'm not the trainer for everything. You know, and if you're going to come to work with me, you're going to make a 3-month commitment, and you're going to keep that commitment because you're taking an hour away 3 times a week from somebody else because my book is full. And I put them through those workouts because they need to understand a couple of things about my style and my approach because we are in relationship with one another. When you decide to work with me, you're going to hold me accountable in 3 months for whether or not you achieve your goals, right? But the reality is, you're with me 3 hours a week. There's 24 hours in a day. What you do in those 23 hours a day that you're not with me, and then those other 24 hours a day that you're not with me, you are solely responsible for. But you are not alone in that. My clients text me all the time. And it's really about understanding the approach of my 2 favorite words are ease and grace. So the first 30 days that we approach a workout program, you're not gonna be doing heavy stuff with me. We're gonna be working on your balance. I'm gonna be assessing your hand-eye coordination. I'm gonna be assessing and making sure that I'm not gonna do something that's going to injure you. I'm also gonna pay for you to go meet with one of my physicians on my team. And I'm gonna get a physical workup done on you with one of either our physical therapist or our chiropractor or our osteopath. And then I'm gonna find out where you are. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to meet you there. And that's the commitment that I make. And then on the other side, your commitment is that you will meet me here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 o'clock. You know? And that you'll just keep showing up. You know, nobody started bench pressing 500 pounds by bench pressing 500 pounds. They started by bench pressing 30 pounds. And I have clients at the bar, we have 2 bars. We call one the sissy bar, it's 35 pounds, the girl bar. And then we have the standard, which is 44.09 pounds. And a lot of people come to me and they can't bench press that. It doesn't mean that in 30 days, they won't be able to do double that. But we start where we start. And we'll get to where we're going by simply continuing to show up. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things about resilience. And like you said, you can be thriving in certain areas of your life and surviving in other areas. And there may be some areas where you're just showing up. And you're just showing up for you. And that is balanced by the areas in your life where you're showing up for you and for your community. We never know who we are inspiring just by being ourselves. We never know who is watching us. We never are fully aware of who we are watching. We think we're seeing one thing, but we're watching and seeing things out of our peripheral vision that our subconscious doesn't process until later. And then you're like, wow, and you kind of have an aha moment. And it's that continuing to push, but remembering ease and grace. And if it ever becomes too much, all you have to do is say so. There's progression and regression in training. You know, you progress, you go forward. And then if something happens and you reach a plateau, we regress a little bit and bring it back. And then we start over again. And sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes we may think that we're at one point in one area of our life only to realize that we're not where we thought we were. We think we're at the top of a mountain and we fall into the bottom of a well. And that happens. And that's why I think one of the things too, community is so important. You know, I have my church community, I have my fitness community, I have my sports community, and I plug in all of those. And it's remaining and staying plugged in, particularly when you are a disenfranchised and minoritized individual, making sure that you continue to show up for you. And in doing so, your community will show up for you. If you need something, that's when people can step in. But they can't do it if they don't know. You know, we say in recovery, a closed mouth never gets fed. If you need something, you have a need, you have to let people know that you have a need because we're not mind readers. But we continue to move on and we continue to push and we continue to persevere in spite of those obstacles. And that's resilience. continuing to persevere and press on, even when it's not easy.
Cool, thank you. So Danny has another question. Squeeze on through.
I would like if any of you can speak on the words confidence and self-esteem with the things you were talking about. Reason why I say that is, as a tennis fan, we were just talking about this today. You got Franklin Tiafoe and Tommy Paul, the last two American tennis players who just got ousted today. Do they have the confidence and the self-esteem and fire in the belly to want to get into the top 10 of the ATP or go to number 1? I didn't hear the words confidence or self-esteem in the context of what you guys are talking about. I'm wondering if you can do that. I know for me personally, my dad was not an emotional guy, but he gave me the confidence that I could do whatever I wanted to do. Military pilot and airline pilot. So I appreciate what you shared, but where did you get the confidence and self-esteem that I can do it? I can become sober. I can stop doing this. I can not only survive, but thrive.
Sure, I'll go first on that one. For me, it was in jail, honestly. Going to jail and spending a long period of time in county jail. I did not go to prison. I sat there for 28 months in county jail over 2 spans. And when I went in, I was in such a state of psychosis from sleep deprivation and months of drug use. And I was in really bad shape. I was in 9.5 weeks, I was in solitary confinement for my safety and the safety of others because I was going through some stuff mentally. But it was also that breakdown of realizing who I am in a room full of total strangers when I am at my lowest point. It was also the first time in my life where I was ever honest with my therapist was in jail. The best therapy I ever got was at the Broward County Jail, and I'm not gonna lie about that. Because I was able to be honest, and I wasn't keeping up this narrative about I'm this successful lawyer, and I have 3 houses, and I drive the newest cars, and I wasn't trying to keep that narrative up. I was broken. I was at the bottom. I was shitting and pissing in a room full of 96 guys where you're literally sitting in the toilet. The toilet's in the middle of the room. I don't know if you've ever been in a county jail before, but there is no privacy. You literally do everything in front of your cellmates. And I was so stripped down after that. I also used to be pee shy when I went to the urinal. I don't know why, but jail got me over that too. I can pee in bathrooms now and poop in bathrooms if I need to. I don't have that problem. But once you're broken down and you make the decisions of who you are and how you want to show up in the world. So for me, it was when I got out of jail, and my husband and my family can talk about this, it has been an 8-year process for me to reunite with my family. And it has been very slow. And my niece actually asked me to perform her wedding in the spring of this year. So we traveled up, and I was the minister who performed the ceremony. And that didn't just happen. It was a lot of work, and it was a lot of continuing to show up. And I have people, and I post stuff on my social media that can sometimes be questionable. It's a little spicy, I admit that. I'm out for the attention. I'm not gonna lie about it. But I also do it because the people who knew who I was can now see who I am. And if I can prevent one person from going through those things that I had to go through in order to find out that, you know what, I am in fact worth it. I didn't believe that for a long time. And when I first got out of jail, Chris Michaels sat down with me from CSL. I went to CSL for 2 years. And Chris was the one who said to me, he goes, when are you gonna let this shit go? Like, seriously, you are not that 5-foot kid that you were when you graduated high school now. You're 240 pounds, 6'3". And I started to surround myself with people who didn't see me. as what I was. And people like Lindsay, who choose to see me as who I am today, not really caring about that thing in the past. And I think that when we get caught up in the past, that's when that self-esteem, and ego and self-esteem it's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, we talk about ego like it's this big hairy monster that we have to tame and beat all the time. And if you have a healthy ego, you have a healthy sense of self. It's different. And not everybody got to grow up in that environment. You saw love in your home. So for people who are not used to that, love can be very uncomfortable. Like, I never saw my mom and dad kiss or make out or anything growing up. So when I was a kid and I would see, other adults making out, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so gross. Where is this coming from? But you see that, and then you become kind of tempered and tolerant to the things that you see and experience, particularly in your youth. And then those things that you don't have in your formative years can become a little bit detrimental for you. And so I think that with regard to the tennis, I don't really know much about those two athletes, but I think that it's a healthy question to ask too about what are their motivations and what are our motivations in while we're doing the things that we're doing. And I will say that when I got diagnosed with HIV, I thought that my world had come to an end. My drug use picked up precipitously and went from a $3,000 a month habit to a $6,000 a month habit, while at the same time paying $3,000 a month for medication because I didn't know I could get it through programs, and I was too proud to ask about all that. I was keeping up a narrative. And so I would just say, look at what is the narrative, what is the storyline that they're trying to keep up, and what is getting in their way of achieving their goal. But they might not even be playing tennis for themselves. They might be playing tennis for somebody else. And you're never going to achieve anything if you're not doing it for you. You have to be your number one priority. And so remembering that what your objective is, and it takes some people longer to get there than others.
Thank you. Do our panelists have something on the question?
I love the question because I don't watch tennis in real time, but I love docu-series. Like, we watch the tennis ones, so I've seen those two gentlemen on the tennis docu-series that I've watched. And my husband and I, anytime we watch any sort of sports docu-series, we're always like, they need a spiritual counselor. Do you think they'll hire us? Should we contact these teams and these individuals? Because they're under a lot of stress. There's a lot of stress. So when I think of confidence and self-esteem, I think we live in a society where it says that our confidence and self-esteem is linked to what society calls success. And I think that's where we've gone wrong. I think if we want to take sports and continue to talk about sports, if we think of like a Michael Jordan, right? How many failures did he get until we saw him as the successful person he was? And so, is that self-esteem? Is that confidence? Is it will? Is it? It's the human spirit. I think as a society we get to change that narrative. We get to say that we build confidence and self-esteem by going past the edge of our existence, by pushing us to levels of possible physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual feats. And we get to grow in confidence because we did it. Right? Did we succeed? Did society say I succeeded? Did I win that match? Did I make that $1 million? I could have failed along the lines, but when I started my talk on this panel, I talked about spirituality being about growth. We don't grow without making mistakes. We don't grow without failures. We don't get to that level of self-awareness until we have the reflection of an experience in our face. So I believe absolutely those gentlemen got to where they are today because of the confidence and self-esteem that they have. I believe it's in them. They obviously have the physical capacity to do it. It's so much pressure. It's so much added onto it, adding competition to the level of it. And that's also something that's been part of our society and given to us, Darwinism, survival of the fittest. We win, we beat somebody else. And I know that our life is really about cooperation. The only way we win, and I think you talked about it earlier, is in service. And when I'm thriving, I'm thinking about people outside of myself, right? I'm working within the community and we're cooperating for a greater good. To me, the confidence and self-esteem comes through trials and tribulations. Yes, comes through successes, but comes through the capacity to have around people, and that's always why I really want a spiritual counselor, right? To have people in your corner that can reflect to you the truth of who you are. Yeah, I failed. I didn't get to the final. That doesn't mean I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable, I'm not good enough. But that's where our mind goes because of the programmings we had as children, that had those belief systems that were placed in us. So if you can have somebody in your corner that continues to show you who you are, regardless of a quote unquote failure in life, I think that's also another way to build confidence and self-esteem.
Real quick, you asked about the difference between confidence and self-esteem, or yes? They have the confidence, they're taking swipes at it, or strokes. But is this who they truly are? And I think that's gonna be derived as time goes on, right? They're gonna show up and either be those people, and I think that's the same thing for us here. Like, are you going to have the confidence to get your happy ass up, get out of bed, go for that walk that you said you were gonna do last year? At the beginning, if you remember the beginning, that you December 31st, I'm gonna do, okay, if you, do you have the confidence to actually do that? Or will you show your true self-worth, your value of you and your health by not calling that doctor, or not going for that walk, or not calling a therapist? Because last week you couldn't stop crying because you felt like poo, right? I didn't say the word. Right? You felt like it, but you didn't follow through. What is your self-worth? What are you worth? What's your value? What value do you hold for yourself? So your self-esteem, self-worth, self-value is what's inside of you, right? That confidence, those words, those messages, the messaging that you either get from outside or you remember from mommy and daddy whispering into your ear when they tucked you in, that confidence is something that will get you going. You sustain it with that self-worth, self-esteem. Better? Yes?
So, thank you. So, just for cognizant of time, I think we have time for one more question from the audience.
Thank you. So I have a very easy question. I know the room has a lot of relatively young people, but for those of us who are definitely on the older side, one question comes up. Much of what has been said about thriving versus surviving is hard to really differentiate because most of us are only old once. When you're younger, there's a lot more parameters or tests or observations of others in your age group by which you can gauge whether it's healthy or not to gauge this way, how you're doing. The image of aging, of course, has evolved and progressed in America by virtue of relatively good health care, so that people are definitely living longer. And I don't know if the same proportions that healthy living is going on longer, but I know that the actual vintage, the age at which people pass away, is much bigger than it was a generation, two, and more before, in urban areas in particular. So is there anything you can say that addresses those of us who are not sure whether overall we're just getting by, surviving, or are we thriving? Whether it's from a spiritual, an exercise, or a mental health standpoint, it'd be kind of nice to have a sense of that. There are really a test we take. Thank you. Because sometimes I don't know if I'm just doing all I can, or if I'm just kicking back and old rocking chairs got me. You know what I mean?
And I'll add to that a little, because you mentioned the aging specifically, and if you could expand again in 3-4 minutes each. I realize that may be challenging, but also, not just from aging, but chronic disease standpoint, where does resilience come in, and how do we know that we're thriving through something like diabetes or high blood pressure or depression, and because those increase in age also, so we may be challenged with other things. So where does resilience actually play a key role in dealing with those chronic illnesses or aging?
I'm giving it to the Klifton person for aging.
Yeah,
I'm thinking still. I mean, that's it.
The only alternative to not getting old sucks.
That's why we're old.
You know, that's what, you know, it's a privilege. There was a day my parents, my mom in particular, will tell you she didn't think I was going to see 40. So when I got arrested, she was very happy. She said she didn't have to worry about me overdosing or waking up in a ditch somewhere, or, you know, God forbid, you know, killing somebody else in my truck. We don't, I think one thing too about our society, particularly American society, is we have placed such a value on youth, whereas more Eastern cultures place more value on wisdom and age and experience. In our culture, we also isolate seniors and older individuals, whereas in other cultures, that's when they bring those older individuals in and care for them and draw on their experience, strength, and hope, and help those individuals as they age continue to realize that they are contributing. And it's when we create these systems and structures by which we divide, and we're really good at that in our alphabet community, you know, dividing. We like to talk about bringing everybody together, but we're the ultimate divisionists. And we have our little pockets of people that we hang out with, and beyond that, you know, we don't venture out. We like to talk about inclusivity, but really, we're only hiding our own shame. And I think that it's hard to age. I'll be 52, like I said, this year, and I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, babe, I need to get moisturizer, you know, and I'm constantly focused on the things that I'm not happy about, instead of like the fact, and I have to remember with my gratitude list, you know, I did wake up.
Amen.
This morning. You know, there are a lot of people who didn't wake up this morning. And I think that we need to do a better job, which is one, my husband teaches the Move with Pride Thursday night dance classes here. That's Jenner over there. And he comes home, he's the youngest person in the room, right? He's 29. So he comes home and he talks about how he loves the dance class. And I'll just use this example. A couple of months, when he first came here to the United States, he didn't speak much English, got into a car accident, he was victimized, wasn't told he needed an aftercare plan, wasn't told he had a severe injury, but they took his insurance money and told him he was fine. Now, 6 years later, he's not fine. And he's not able to dance and move the way that he has been, and he's had to have a number of procedures and going back. But here's what he says about when he comes home from the Move with Pride events. He's like, I'm so glad I found that. Because he can't teach Zumba, because there's too much jumping, too much twerking. But the Move with Pride, he's like, they are as happy to see me as I am to see them. And he comes home. And that's that generational thing that I'm talking about, that particularly we don't have in the gay community.
Yeah.
I go to events and everybody is either 60 or above or 30 or below. It's all the twinks or the daddies.
Yeah.
we don't blend well. You also go to a crowd and it's going to be a vast majority of white men or a vast majority of black men. We don't integrate the way that we wish the rest of the world would allow us to integrate. We don't practice it within our own communities. And particularly HIV positive, HIV negative. There's still a massive stigma around HIV. And my husband and I experienced it firsthand at ART. He's negative, I'm positive, and the doctor literally told him, well, you need to go on medications because you can still contract it from him even though he's undetectable. It's a lack of understanding and it's a creation of fear. And if we could draw on the wisdom of the people that have gone before us, you still have a lot of value. You still have a lot of work to do, otherwise you wouldn't be here. The Creator would have called you home a long time ago. So look at those places where you can contribute and integrate yourself into those places as much as possible. Come work out with me a couple of times, you know, so we're right down the street. Come to the Move with Pride here. Make sure that you just connect and continue to be relevant. And I promise you, if you do that, an opportunity for service will show up.
Not everybody gets the privilege of being old.
You're exactly right. The alternative, like I said, the alternative is not that attractive.
Yep, and there's
It's
no
very
family
dark.
youth that we know of. So any, from Clifton or Reverend Tina, any brief comments?
First and foremost, the idea that I can actually share space with you all tonight, with all my naivete. I feel like I'm answering questions for professionals that have amassed years of knowledge and expertise and experience. I'm just here trying to talk to you, hoping that the next thing that I say is something that's plausible or has some degree of significance for you. So thank you, first and foremost. The second thing is, we work with a lot at Fehr Counseling. We're working with a lot of the patients that actually see Dr. Severs, Dr. Joya, and Holy Cross, because we have an agreement with them that we will work with their respective patients there. So a lot of the patients that we see are from, this community, right? This respective population. They're encouraged to come to the Pride Center in order to remember that there is value. Remember that there are spaces that you're not only occupying, but you need to continue to do things to engage that same talent, that same intelligence, and also those same gifts. One of the ways that I talk with those patients who are struggling in their marriages, whenever they're thinking, okay, well, I'm not thriving in my marriage. Well, let's look at what ways you're actually showing up. What are some of those things that you need to address, and some of those things that you're afraid of addressing? So when we're looking at ageism that's taking place, there are spaces, there are centers, there are companies, organizations, there are facilities that are here to rally you on when you're not necessarily doing your best. But I think one of the biggest things that we can do for each other is to raise our hand and say, hey, I need some help. I need to take a different look at this. I need some greater awareness or insight into it. And once you actually do that, it gives, hopefully, people like myself, although I may be a little younger, not by much, by the way, it gives me an opportunity to better understand what's going on and how I can support. And also remind you that if you are hitting certain or checking certain boxes for yourself as far as your own respective diagnoses or your own challenges in life or your own challenges in your relationship, as long as you're checking those boxes, you're actually doing really well. So you may not need much from me or anybody else on this panel or anybody else out there. You may be doing just fine. You just need to be reminded, and I think we spoke about that earlier, just reminded that you're doing great.
Great, thank you. Reverend Tina, any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, you started by asking the question, if I don't have the reflections in my life, how will I know if I am on survival, if I'm thriving? And I would just ask any of us and all of us, any questions that we have, along that avenue or any others, is ask yourself, how am I feeling? I am the gauge, I am the space, I am the place, I am the only one that can tell me where I'm at with anything. Where am I at in my own being? And start to look at the areas in your life that we spoke of from up here or any area that you're with, How am I in my relationships? How am I in my communication? How am I in my body? How am I in my movement? How am I in my community? But turn within. Like, this is where everything is. And we're gonna be the most honest with ourselves anyway, right? This is the place where, I'm in a relationship. He doesn't know probably 95% of the things that I'm thinking, right? Everything happens within me. The way in which I process happens within me. The way in which I reflect happens within me. The responsibility I'm willing to take or not take happens within me. And so my personal case in any of the questions I have is ultimately, how am I feeling? What is my question? What is the question I have in my heart about what I'm experiencing? Or I heard something on the panel, I went home, and I wonder this question. I didn't ask this question. I didn't have the courage to ask the question, right? Turn within, ask yourself the question. we have the answers. We have the roadmap. You know, when it talks about aging, in my early 20s, I moved to Spain with my husband, and the most wonderful thing about living in Spain for me was seeing everybody was included, all ages, because I came from a time and a place where old people hung out with old people, young people hung out with young people, middle-aged people hung out with middle-aged people. But in Spain, everyone came out at night. Everyone came to the plaza. Everyone had coffee or wine or tapas and communicated and danced and sung, and it was a vision that I was able to grab and to know that that's important. That's an important aspect of life. That's important aspects of making that part of life here in the US of A. Everyone should be included. Everyone gets to be included. And I love how you brought up the wisdom of different cultures. I, decades ago, started studying blue zones. Has everyone heard of blue zones? Yeah. Areas around the world that has the highest amount of people who live to 100 and over without degenerative diseases. Without degenerative diseases. So to me, being a spiritual person and not just, actually I have my personal training certificate as well, and then I graduated with psychology, so it's pretty cool that I sit in the middle because I have a little bit of both thinking. But, so being a spiritual person, what I see is whenever I see someone having an ability to do something, that's in all of us, right? And we have the ability to heal ourselves and to cure ourselves. I know that's another topic that we don't have to even open at this moment, but I believe that. I believe healing is possible in all things, in all ways, and people being able to live their best lives, their most physical, capable, moving lives at the highest ages, is a possibility available to all of us. And it just requires little switches, little changes in our life to receive that and to have that capacity and have that ability. So again, I thank you for allowing me to be here with all of you to hear the questions you have and to hear what's on your hearts and how you want to be included. And it's a wonderful experience. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. We'll bring this to a closing because everything has to end at some point. I want to thank our panelists, Rusty, Roventino, and Klifton. Thank you, Matt, for being here. As Danny had mentioned at the beginning, if you could pull out your 2 final forms, your post survey and your feedback form, and I will give you a few seconds to complete